If I had to sell all my home theater and AV gear in order to facilitate a move. So my wife and I just spent a week in sunny California, right on the coast, most of the time in Southern California, Orange County. I'm really drawn to that area. As I often do when I go places, I spent a lot of time looking at Zillow, thinking about what would it be like to live there. And man, that temperate ocean breeze just filled me with energy in a way that humid summers and freezing winters and allergy-driven springs in Michigan don't. Will Techthusiasm relocate to the West Coast? I don't know. I think it's fun to think about, for a home theater perspective, it would be a pretty considerable technology move, going from having more space available to us here in Michigan, generally larger houses at a more affordable price. I have a basement where I was able to put my dedicated projection home theater system. We've got a pretty good sized house here. I've got a nice living room with the large LG OLED and all that, 2 entertainment spaces because we have the room for it down here in the storage area to keep, large dual rack of all of this equipment and stuff. But I was musing on the thought during the flight back, if we were actually to go to California, it's going to very significantly change the type of house that we would live in, the amount of space that we would have, how that space is configured, based on what's available, first of all, how things are built there, and then of course affordability. So more than likely we would be giving up many thousands of square feet. Again, no basements. And so what would I do with an entertainment space, or what would I do for home theater if we were to make that move? I'm certainly not putting in a dedicated home theater system. I think I haven't added it up completely. I need to do so, but I'm pretty sure I'm knocking on the door, let's say, of about $100,000 in total equipment, gear, the effective cost of the labor to have installed and set everything up that I have. Going back to the idea, if I were to just wipe all of this stuff away, we drop this house off, we pick up our stuff, and we go west, what would I do? And if I were to spend a similar amount of money on AV, home theater, entertainment, in a much more limited space with very different dynamics to it, what would I buy? So how could I spend $100,000 on a premium, super premium luxury home theater setup in a much smaller space on the coast in California? So here's what I came up with. Feel free to shoot holes in any of this. I'd love to see the comments, maybe what is or is not, would or would not be a part of the system. And so one of the things that I'll say first of all is going into a smaller home like that, I'm operating under an expectation that we're going to have much less space. I'm thinking immediately towards a 2-channel or a 2.2 channel setup. It's not going to really very easily support surrounds. We're not going to be building. I'm really growing more and more enthused with the idea of a 2-channel setup. I love a 2.2 channel setup in my living room. So let's go down the gear list. $100,000. Let's talk about speakers first. I think speakers, I would want to make a pretty significant portion of that budget. If I'm going, 2 channels, I'm going towers. Maybe because of the space, I don't want something like incredibly overbearing, but I want a good size, dynamic, loud, capable speaker. And one of the brands that really has my mind share a lot lately, based on the press that they've been getting, reviews from other channels and so on, is Perlisten. So right off the bat, let's go top of the range. A pair of Perlisten S7t towers, that's about 20 grand, $10,000 or so a piece. Might say right away, well, why not Focal? I would give Focal some consideration. I would have to think hard about the largest of maybe the Canta towers versus something in a Sopra. But as you get into the bigger Sopras, or even like the Utopias, or I would be using up a much more significant portion of the budget. And there's a bunch of stuff we need to fit in here. So $20,000 for a pair of speakers feels pretty good. I don't think those S7Ts are incredibly large or would be incredibly overbearing in perhaps a smaller living room. Build quality, performance, all of that should be just impeccable. The other thing that I like about going potentially with that brand is the idea that I would just buy the subwoofers from them as well. So let's assume that we're looking at a pair of D15S. I don't think I would go with the dual drivers. Again, just they're monsters, much bigger footprints, taller. Plus, again, we're not dealing with a large type of space. It's going to be a moderately sized living room. But I love the idea of 2.2, where I've got a tower and a subwoofer that goes with it. essentially in stereo pairs. 2 subs at least would help even out some bass response, whatever we might get out of a room that might be open concept, you know, not locked down like a dedicated room, maybe not treated as well. So staying in brand, keeping the integration. Those subs are about $5,000 a piece. So all in all, pair of tower speakers and a pair of stereo subs to go with them. We're looking at basically $30,000 to start, 30% of the budget on speakers. I think that's pretty well balanced, and I think those would provide a powerful, immersive, and impactful audio experience for that type of home. So now we need some stuff to drive that, and I would stick with separates. This kind of budget would certainly allow, I think, the ability to stick with separates. I'm staying home on this one, I think, the Anthem STR. So one of the things that would predicate a decision of any processor or preamp or whatever that I might buy for that setup is now, of course, we're focused not on a larger scale multi-channel preamplifier, but on a 2-channel preamplifier, something that would also allow support for 2 subwoofers, stereo speakers, and a stereo pair of subwoofers. And I want something with room correction. Again, we're talking about a living room, and so room correction I think would be incredibly valuable, whether that's Anthem Arc or something that has Dirac. But sticking with the Anthem STR, a processor that I know, a brand that I'm familiar with, both its positives and some of its quirks. That's a high-end processor, really great features and build quality and capability. Anthem Arc would take care of those speakers and those subs. All XLR output, everything I think would be great. $5,000 MSRP-ish there, continuing to add an Anthem STR into the budget, and allows me to keep with separate. So amplifiers, I'm a little mixed on this one, and I think this is where I might try something different or change things up a little bit. Of course, I've been a big proponent of Parasound. I put a bunch of money into Parasound amps for my theater, matching up with Focal. I think I might be ready to try something different though, and one of my thoughts would go towards Apollon Audio Class D Purify, looking for something because of the environment that's just super clean, super low noise floor. Class D for the power. I don't want to be drawing Class A or in a space where I probably don't have like 20 amp dedicated circuits. And as I've been thinking about amplifier additions for the living room and that for this house specifically, the Class D Purifies, the high-end Purify models, I'm kind of drawn to those. I like what I'm reading and seeing referenced about those. Apollon looks like they make some of the highest build quality, just the nicest implementations of some of those amplifiers. I think it's a UK company. Specifically, what I would be looking at here is the PET 950. It's basically a 2-channel amplifier, like a dual monoblock, essentially style design. Again, we're only driving 2 speakers. Perfect. Putting out, those amps put out something like 500 watts into 4 ohms. Lots of available power to command and control and drive those high-end Perlisten speakers. We don't need sub amps, of course. The amplifiers would be in the subs themselves. So that's the audio stack: the speakers, the subs, and the gear to drive them. On the video side, I'm staying home as well. Apple TV, of course, a couple $100. Doesn't even, it's a rounding error in the budget, but that would remain one of my premier source devices for a lot of things, just like it continues to do so at my home here today. I wouldn't go just Apple TV if I'm spending that much money. I'm staying premium. I want to keep some premium sources in that, so I think I'm keeping the Kaleidescape in there. Strato C player, a Tera 12 terabyte compact model, about $10,000 to maintain the Kaleidescape. I've got my existing movie library. Yeah, I know we don't have Atmos and all that stuff going on in the room, but I still want some really high quality, high bitrate lossless audio. I still want the highest quality video bit rates and such that I could get, because we'll get to the TV and the screen here in a second. I think it's worth keeping it in. It fits still in the budget up to that 100K, real large number. So we've got the Apple TV for the daily driver watching. We've got Kaleidescape for luxury movie watching. I would still want to maintain some premium luxury gaming capability, so I'm keeping the gaming PC, the same one that I have now, or that I would like to rebuild here this fall. You know, high-end NVIDIA 4090 video card coming up, latest CPUs, earmarking about $4,000. I think that's still, if you wanted to build the topmost PC coming into this fall that you could build, Intel 13900K, a 4090, big SSD, the motherboards, the power supplies, everything that you would need in some kind of a nice case, of course, for now a living room application that would be quiet but still cool, and not be obtrusive. $4,000 for that. So we spent about $55,000 so far. $55,000 of that 100K. And so we got these source devices. Well, what are we going to watch those sources on? And for this budget, I'm going, I think, 97-inch LG G2. Yeah, crazy. It's a $25,000 television, and you can get an 83-inch LG G2, which is what I have in my living room right now, for on the order of $5,000 or $6,000. That's a lot more money for that extra size. However, keep in mind, in this new home, going out west, smaller space, I'm not doing projection. There's no projection home theater going into this house. And if I was prepared at some point here in the long run to look to spend $25,000 or on the order of $25,000 to have something like a JVC NZ9 just in my theater, why would I not spend that equivalent amount of money to put that monster, highest end, most premium, biggest that I could get display into my one single entertainment zone and take advantage of it, not just for movies, but for games and any other type of Apple TV use. So it feels like a lot compared to what else would be available, but I really want to maximize size. I want big immersive images, watching movies on it, some of which may be scope, where you're losing size down because you've got the 16, the scope image in the 16:9 field. In some ways, though, I'm still saving a lot of money here in the long run, because in the projection setup, going to a similarly priced projector versus TV in the theater, probably at some point be looking at a video processor, maybe a lens. The TV really doesn't need any of that. I trust, and I think I would be completely happy with the HDR processing and performance of the display itself. Obviously, no need for a lens because you're not projecting anything. So a super high-end projector at the same price of that TV still demands, maybe in the long run, spending thousands of dollars on video processing and lens that now no longer have a need to spend. This is why I like the focused elements of not having two spaces and just really maximizing the enjoyment of a single space that you use all the time. The return on investment and the return on what you get and the value of having all of your money concentrated there, the system that you're using all the time, man, that really appeals to me. Another way to save money there could be to go with like the 98-inch, I think it is, TCL that's out. And maybe I do some research on that. It is quite a bit cheaper, more than half compared to the LG. But after having a number of televisions before and now having the 83-inch LG G2, I would fully expect that that 97 G2 is going to beat the pants off of the 98 TCL. And again, we're talking about spending a premium budget, so the money's there. It fits in there. 55 now plus another 25 for the TV takes us to 80. Still got 20K left for a bunch of other bits and pieces in odds and ends. So I think that just makes a lot of sense. Odd to say that makes sense. So the system will be in the living room. It's probably not going to have such a degree of integration and installation. So assuming I'm going to need some kind of furniture, a television stand with the speakers and the subs kind of standing to the side, I'm going to need a place to put that STR and the amp and the sources, and they're probably all going to be in more of a traditional setup, shelves underneath, the TV up on top. So let's just call it $5,000 to buy a nice premium piece of home theater furniture, sized and stable enough to mount and hold a television of that size. The G2s are meant to be wall mounted, but there's lots of cool stand mount rack things available where you can mount the TV onto arms that are part of the console and the stand itself, rather than even needing to put it on the wall. So I'm presuming that I would find or look for something like that, hopefully something that can accommodate such a large TV. Many of them might top out in the 80s. We're talking about a 97, but still, I think $5,000 should be able to buy a pretty nice premium piece of home theater furniture. So then we need some power management. In my system right now, per my recent videos, I run now a combination of a UPS and a firm line conditioner. All of my sources and processing type of things are on the UPS for maximized protection, and my amplifiers run off of the conditioning and the surge protection of the firm. I would expect to probably keep a similar structure to that within this setup, which is maintain a sizable UPS and run the Kaleidescape, run the sources, run the STR, run the TV off of that UPS, and then some other type of power protection, a little bit of line conditioning, whatnot, to power those subwoofers, which will have their amplifiers discreetly there, and then the 2-channel amp that would run those speakers, but not a UPS for those higher current draw, higher power draw types of items. So I'm putting about $2,000 into the budget here. That should buy both of those devices and take care of all of the power input needs and so on. One of the things that I really enjoy having at our home here, again, based on having the space in the yard and all of that, is the natural gas generator that kicks the house in, presuming probably wouldn't have that out in California. Don't know what the state of all of the energy delivery and stability might be, so I think having equipment protected, and the right stuff on a UPS is probably of utmost importance, maybe more important out there even than it probably even is here. Let's assume we're starting from scratch, so I'll throw in $1,000 or $1,500, I guess, for cables. It's going to be short runs. All of the equipment, again, is right there. HDMI is no big deal. Infinite cables should work, and I really would continue to look to route the HDMI into the TV for these specific sources. I much prefer doing that than switching them through something else, so I don't feel I'm giving up anything having the STR versus something that actually would switch HDMI. That way the picture modes and all the settings can be very, very discrete to each HDMI input of the TV. But HDMI cables are cheap. I would stick with Infinite. No big deal there. Maybe spend up a little bit for some speaker cables. Probably stick to the Mogamis in that as well for the XLR connections. But all in all, the cable needs maybe some power cords, buying power cords that are of specific lengths necessary so we don't have to coil up all of this extra cable, especially when the devices are going to kind of be out in a room. Cable management will be really important aesthetically. $1,500 take care of all the cable needs. There really aren't that many. Now, another thing, command and control. So when you're sitting in the room, I don't think I would need quite as much command and control as Control 4 allows me to have right now, where I've got 2 items and some Zone 2 things, or 2 spaces and some Zone 2 things, and switching between different devices, and I'm not even in IR visibility range to control most of the stuff. I think when everything's in the room, it really simplifies this stuff, meaning I would be able to just grab the Apple TV remote and it should be able to turn things on and command and control volume, and I don't need IR extenders and all of that. But the reality is I'm still talking about 3 sources. There is a little bit of switching on the television itself for those 3 HDMI inputs. Wouldn't be using CEC because not everything really supports it. I don't think Kaleidescape supports CEC. The PC doesn't. I would still like to have one remote in the room that I could pick up and use reliably to command and control the system. I'm familiar with Control 4 from having it in the house here for so long. We don't have Harmony anymore. Most of the other remote options that I see or hear about, I generally see or hear that they fail quite miserably. So I'm still going to leave a couple $1,000, let's call it $3,000 in this budget for a little mini Control 4 system. Maybe one of the newer like Core controllers, a smaller version thereof. And as I'm recording this, Cydia 2022, Control 4 just announced their new line of remotes with more hard buttons, even numeric keypads. Frickin' awesome. Hopefully they'll do a lot more to be able to actually command and control an Apple TV. They're supposed to have voice. I can't wait to hear more about those. If I don't move, we stick here in Michigan, my Neos are gone, man, and I'm buying those things as quick as I can get them, and I'll be talking about them on the channel. But we're talking about the house in California right now, and so yeah, sticking with Control 4, particularly because we've got the Apple TV. I want to be able to program some stuff for the Kaleidescape. I probably would look to add some other maybe more minimal or focused elements of home automation around that new house, some cameras, some locks, some lighting, being able to program all of that, knowing Control 4, there's room in the budget for it. Scale it appropriately, of course, but I think it makes a lot of sense. And I would just need one controller, and I would just need one remote then for that one single space. So sticking with that for sure. And then one of the other things that I would think I would add into the system is, because this is going to be our music listening system, I don't expect to have a ton of distributed audio around this house. If I did, maybe would buy a couple of Apple speakers, for the kitchen or the office or for listening there. but it's going to be a smaller home. The living room system is going to be able to really fill the space up with high quality audio coming out of those speakers and everything. And I want to be able to get high fidelity audio into this system. And I think the easiest way to do that would be to allocate some money, let's call it $1,000, and buy a dedicated new version of like an iPad mini, leave it accessible there on the racks by the gear, plugged in to the Anthem STR with the USB connection, get the whole like 24-bit 192 plus high fidelity audio out of Apple Music, which you can't get from the Apple TV going through the LG and then back down to the STR. So if we just wanted to listen to music, we don't need the TV running, we just have the audio system running, the iPad is right there, we can key up playlists, and I think that would be a fantastic way to go. I had been thinking about some other type of streamer or audio options, so I'll go ahead and give like the honorable mention then to other devices like the Hi-Fi Rose or that NAD, because without the iPad kind of inputting to the STR, I would definitely want some type of streamer, some way to play high quality, high fidelity music without having to have the television and all of that stuff on. So if that was all built into one, you'd be able to walk up to the front of an NAD or the front of a Hi-Fi Rose and interact with it to be able to select music without everything else being on. The downsides though, I think, is the Hi-Fi Rose doesn't have room correction, which I would want for all of the audio essentially, so that would have to come in from somewhere else. The NAD would be an integrated instead of sticking with the cool idea of having the separates for real close to the same price. That iPad then I think makes a lot of sense, as much as I like those other devices. So that's my stack. I'm quite honest that like in some ways that system makes me more excited than even having maintaining what I already have, like living here, having the two spaces, having the dedicated room, because in a smaller space sitting close to a 97-inch screen is gonna feel awesome. It's gonna feel immersive. There's just so many benefits to the flat panel over projector in terms of how it looks, OLED blacks, super bright real HDR, gaming, all of that, one system, sitting down anytime that I would want to do audio video based entertainment, knowing that I'm doing it on the system that I spent all of that money into, rather than having a secondary system that's the more expensive thing off in a separate room that doesn't get accessed as much as the natural flow and accessibility and usability of having something in the living room. So I do have to admit that in many regards, I'm drawn to that type of setup. One of the only ways that I could see it really kind of failing or being substandard is if we did end up sitting too far away from that 97-inch television. But if we're in a 12-foot range, 13-foot range, give or take, I think that would be plenty immersive. And if we stay here in the long run, definitely like to see that 97-inch hanging in the living room, upsized from the 83 for gaming. Poke some holes in my ideas. You have some alternative suggestions that would either be a better use of the money, give better performance, and so on. Adding it all up, I'm knocking right on the edge of $100,000 there. Would you allocate the money differently? Less for video, more for audio? Change some things in other ways? I didn't really put any credence on an ultra short throw projector. That could be a way to get a bigger screen. However, to me, I don't feel I did rationalize that one through in my mind, but I think the 97-inch G2 is an overall better buy with this type of budget relative to the type of performance and usability and features and such that it has. So sound off in the comments. Let me know what you think. Otherwise, please do all the regular YouTube stuff, like, subscribe. Do leave some comments, even just a thanks, a thumbs up. All of that stuff helps the algorithms, helps to grow the channel. If you'd like to support the channel more directly, check down in the description. We've got super thanks, channel memberships, merch, Amazon affiliate links, and more. So I greatly appreciate anything that you may be willing to do. Otherwise, come on back for more home theater discussion and fun.